put this top on today because I slept terribly and I felt terrible, and I was like, I want to share something, but I cannot share it looking like trash. So anyway, I put on this and I decided to sit in this very well curated and decorated kitchen in the flat where I'm currently staying. So please appreciate the artistic direction. Oh, my mood does not correlate at all with how everything is in that space and how I look, but that's beside the point. Okay, today I want to start by a few updates on something, and then I want to share something about everyday pleasures in the shadow of longer term project. So the first thing I want to mention is that I have just put myself through a tunnel the last 2 weeks of application for PhD in the US. And I was just really thinking that this is something that I should be doing because after all, I want a PhD. And it's true, I might not really want to be in the US for 6 years, but after all, do I really have a chance to get a position in Europe? Like the funding system and the state of arts and fundings is just, it's not great. So maybe I should apply anyway, but do I really want to apply to the schools? Although I don't really feel like being there, and 6 years is somewhat long, but you get the idea. So anyway, I put myself for this 2 weeks of tunneling to prepare everything. And then yesterday, today, which were supposed to be the last days before the deadline, I decided not to do it. I could go into the details of why I decided not to do it, but I think this is not really relevant. What I thought was more relevant was this sort of imposed self-deception upon myself, where I was like, oh, I'm such a failure. I said I would apply and I don't even apply. Like I'm definitely such a failure. But actually, it was about like redirection. It's like, why would I apply to something that could be so life altering in terms of like, if it works, right? If I don't feel like it. And I think that this comes with this inheritance of me to always feel like if I said I would do something, I would do it. And, it doesn't matter if it's a good idea or not, I'll just try to do it. And sometimes this has taken me like way too far in a situation where I shouldn't even have been, but just because I was like too prideful to not give up. Yeah, so this time I was like, you know what, we're going to try something different. We are going to give up, basically. We're going to give up before we even start it because we just don't feel like it. Yeah. Selfishly. Without a backup plan, even. Yeah. Anyway, that's just the life. Small update. I'm really hoping to get a position in Europe at some point this year. I also really want to get more fictional and like cinematography based projects moving, so let's hope that works. It shall work. There's no other way. Lol. Okay, so today I want to talk a little bit about everyday pleasure in the shadow of long-term goals. And I want to talk about this by mentioning an anecdote. I mean, it was on the day of the book launch of the book cycle, The Sacred and the Doomed, the first book I wrote. And, I imagine the first time that you get a first book published and people come and you can sign the book and you can read to be somewhat the most joyful moment of the creative process. But somewhat that one evening, I was just so sad. And I was like really, really somewhat discontent. And I was discontent for different reasons, but mostly I was discontent because I had just spent the last 2 previous years working so much, as in like I was doing a master, I was freelancing, I was also writing 2 books at the same time and doing art projects, and I had lost my sanity big time. It was like 2021, 2022, 2023. I had lost my sanity a little bit. I also had lost important people around me that, were like, Morgan, you are definitely prioritizing work over relationships. So, well, you know. So I had lost quite some things along the way. And, during the book launch, I was just really I was very happy. The book launch was a success, but I was like dissociating. I was like, wait, all of this for this. Mm. Mm. Mm-mm. Oops. So I remember that same evening, I texted Gerd Lovink, which is this like mentor figure, which, only got some kind of recognition and, let's say, public visibility in his like late 30s, beginning of 40s for what he's done. So straight away, I reached out to him and I'm like, how does it feel like to, work so much, work really hard, and have no one care for decades? And then one day, suddenly, people take interest and they're like greeting you for it. Like, how does it feel? How is that, Because, I'm quite lucky in the way that, like, I'm getting feedback quite young, so I can understand, what's nourishing and what's not. But I'm thinking, like, if you wait your entire life for people to engage with your work and then they engage, and you waited so long, you sacrificed a lot, and then suddenly you're like, oh, okay. So I asked him that question, right? And to which he answered, it's bitter. No long paragraph, no anecdotes, it's bitter. And we can interpret that sentence in many different ways, but I will let you know how I interpret this for myself. Is that I realized I had no business really sacrificing the everyday life and the everyday precious moment of care and, slowness and laziness and, let's say, plenitude of life in exchange for a sort of like desperate, sacrifice-oriented kind of career. And the reason why I realized that is because I was like, okay, this is probably how most things are going to feel, it's like you work for your projects, you get them out there, and then you just get into another one and another one and another one. Thinking that, you're either chasing an idea, a thrill, recognition, like it could be many things. But I was thinking to myself, wait, no, something's rotten in the script. Like I cannot live like that. Like this is gonna be heartbreaking many times and does not lead me to some kind of contentment. So luckily I had that realization quite early, so I could like try to change my manners. I'm not saying my manners have changed much, but like I'm trying to be aware of them. And this is why I'm often reflecting on like everyday pleasure in the shadow of big long-term goals. Either you're writing an album, you're writing a book, you're making a movie, you're fucking building a cathedral, like whatever. The prospect of one thing being finished might take so long that you really should, at all costs, and this is advice to myself, enjoy the everyday life in the meantime. Yes, and that's easier said than done. It's very difficult, in this day and age, and for most people, including myself, to be present, to be grateful. That being said, I realized that appreciating those small things and making sure that I was making them, and I will name a few later, was the only way for me to be somewhat equilibrated in this ratio of like everyday versus long term. Yeah. And it's also a way, to look back at life and at time that passed as not one monolith thing. It's like, oh, what were you up to the last 3 years? Oh, I was just writing this book and it was very complicated. No, you can look back and you can say, oh, I was like writing this book and also doing this and also enjoying that and also enjoying my cup of coffee every morning and sometimes going to the library to read things that were unrelated. And I sometimes had conversations with the person who worked at the supermarket that were absolutely unrelated, and this was very beautiful. And I also did X, Y, Z, and it really is this sort of like nourishing of everything, not thinking that one big project is gonna like, you know, make you feel some kind of way. And yeah, I find it difficult to do because it's not only about public recognition. Like when you have an idea, you want to see it produced, you want to see it made, you want to see it live. So impatience is one thing, and in the face of impatience, you just want to like work really hard and really fast to get the thing out there. But that is no recipe for a good project anyway. So yeah, what are everyday pleasure in the shadow of long-term goals? Well, for me, I'll just share you some of my tips, if you don't mind. Well, mostly, yeah, it's either in, you know, like the food you prepare for yourself or for your loved ones. It's in the daily rituals you have with your practice of what you love, you know, like what you read, your sources. It's also sharing the process and your ideas with people, feedback. It's also the people you meet along the way, the conversation you have. And you know, it's like seeing all those little things that are either mundane or a little bit more extraordinary as like the entire constellation of what makes a project come to life. And you know, in some ideal way, you would appreciate all those steps equally to the final product of it all. And in an even higher possibility, you appreciate more the process of it all than the final product. Yeah. Because the truth is that you just never know. Like expecting one thing to fix your entire life is just so risky. And when I say one thing, you know, it is either like one person, one job, one situation, whatever. Like it's just not sustainable. And I really wish not to find myself again in that situation of that one evening at this book launch where I was reflecting upon myself. And, you know, I have some regrets, honestly, about this period of my life, but like, oh, sorry. But I'm just trying to make things different, basically. Yeah. Yeah, and it's not, I think it's working better now. It's working better now. And I also think this is a sustainable way for oneself to keep making things in the long term and not be crushed by, you know, a movie that never, you know, got distributed, a book that just never was published, or which was badly received, or, you know, a project that never saw the light. Like, you just need for your own sanity to just like, yeah, embrace the everyday steps of it also. Okay, I've been yapping for 30 minutes about the same thing, so I think that's enough. I would say long life to everyday mundanity in the face of bigger things, and also long life to walking away from things that you thought were a good idea, but actually maybe they're not. I'm trying this strategy this year, you know. I'm trying to be like, you know what? Maybe being strong is knowing when to give up.